Alright, so we're going to go through week of May 20. Let me adjust this. And all these week of May 20 questions are 4-bet pots played between the button and the big blind. Show you the ranges used. So it's going to be versus a 3-bet range, and then also the versus open range. So versus 3-bet range and versus 4-bet range. Alright, so big one was a button 4-bet, so calling these hands at those frequencies. And the button had 4-bet this range here. Assume that's correct. Yeah, so this range here, sorry, because it goes 13.5. There's now multiple different versus 3-bet ranges depending on the 3-bet size when we're looking at the button open. So there's 2 different ones. So here this is versus the 12 big blind 3-bet, this is versus 13.5 big blind 3-bet. They are slightly different. Okay, so this is the range here. So all these hands which 4-bet, with the exception of the fact that there's some all in. So some particular hands in this range will go all in. So some of the Queen Jack will go all in. Well, actually, all the Queen Jack that does 4-bet will just 4-bet all in. And some of the Ace King offsuit. Right, a bit of the Kings as well. It's not super important to know that, but it is nice to know that you can do things like that. So this is the range for out of position. So it looks like it's the range for in position player. So Ace and Kings is there, Queen Jack suited isn't there. Out of position's got some aces. Right, in the versus 4-bet range, about half the aces are being called and half the aces are being 5-bet. And it's like a min 5-bet when aces does 5-bet. Usually when aces 5-bets it goes for a small size. Alright, so let's go through the questions. And hello to everyone who's joined. We're going to go through questions week of May 20. If you haven't done the quiz yet, we'll give it a try now. Alright, so button opens 2.5, small one fold, big one 3-bets to 13.25, and then here it pops up to 24.5. Okay, so on ace 3-2, this is the line villain donks. Quarter pot, we call villain donks. Villain continues in the quarter pot, we call, and then villain jams the rest of it. Alright, what do you guys think about this line here? So it's going to be not within range, fold, call, or call or fold.
Okay, I don't mind starting it off, but I do have some questions about this. Okay, not within range. I actually think it's. I think the ace queen probably raises the turn. Yeah, I think the ace queen probably raises the turn. I don't see anything else really needing to do that. Now, ace 6, I think, is just the call, just because you have the ace and it's a call. Now, this is why I have questions, because I don't understand why we fold the king and call or fold the queen. But I think that's what the answer is. But I'm not sure I understand the theory behind it.
Anyone want to guess?
He's a lot of ace queen himself, and so we block his value with queens, but not with kings.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, sir.
Here, this is the jamming range. I mean, most of the jamming range is top pair, and most of the top pair is ace queen. So blocking a queen is nice, right? There's no real need to be blocking a king because they don't have any king X in their bluffing range at all. Alright. So it looks like that particular combination of ace queen doesn't make it. The ace queen with the diamond usually does, but without a diamond just jams a turn. What's it, A6? Yeah, A6 is just A6. Whatever the donking ranges you want. There's a fair amount of donking. And the reason why like these kinds of boards are donked is because the out of position player's got a bunch of just the out of position player's actually got a fairly polar distribution here. They've got a lot of the strong top pairs as well as the straight, but they don't really have much else that needs to be protected in terms of a checking range. So like after you check, even a 10% pot bet, you're folding 50% of the time. So it's kind of as if on this particular board, the average player had 4-bet and then the average player had called, right? And then you're giving up a lot on the flop, but still having a donking range despite having equity down at 40%, right? There's all these weak hands at the bottom with almost no equity, right, to outdraw any of the calling range. That just gives up, right? And because there's all these give ups that have to happen, the average player will start to donk. All right, there's no way to defend enough. All right, and this is because it's in like a way ahead, way behind spot. Like a lot of these weak draws at the bottom are just crushed. They're absolutely crushed by the other pairs, even the other pairs which check back, and all the bluffs, of course. All right, so there's the next one. So here we got 8-6-3, bet a tenth of the pot, they call, checks through on the turn, and jams the river. Anyone have any thoughts about this one? All right, so which of these hands is not within range?
I would guess tens. You got that just to fold because it probably blocks bluffs and doesn't really block much or any value at this point.
Well, I mean, it helps to figure out which one of these hands is not within range first. Right?
Yeah.
So if it's not within range, it's probably because it either didn't bet so small on the flop or it bet the turn.
Yeah, I guess that logic, maybe tens wants to bet bigger on the flop to deny some equity to overcards, get rather than induce floats from stuff that's pretty decent equity against it. They might fold to bigger bet.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but you've got a heart, so it's not really. It's not like they've got a huge amount of equity against you. The other cards do have a lot of equity against you, but with the heart, it's not quite bad.
Could we check back Ace King on the flop?
You can just value bet Ace King here. So, like, if you think of your opponent's range, like what pairs do they have? They really only have the pocket pairs that they have preflop. Do they really hit an ace? Do they really hit do they really hit the 8? Do they really hit the 6? Do they really hit the 3? Nothing really hits the 3 in their range. So, like, we look at their ranges. This is the betting range for us on the flop, everything. Ace 3 hit, the 8x hit, and the 6x hit. So it's not a lot, right? So they're going to have to be quick calling with a lot of ace high. So on the flop, we can value bet our own ace king.
So does Ace King get to the river?
Yeah, so value bet here and then bet check
Yeah.
back the turn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So which of these hands is not within range?
Actually, I think we want to bet all of them on the flop. Could that be? And we are not checking all on the turn. Like Ace-7 could be a bluff.
Yep,
Or
so,
just-
so which of these hands is betting the turn?
Is Ace Jack actually betting the turn?
Why do you think Ace Jack is betting the turn? I think it has to bet the turn all the time. So Ace King probably checks back. Tens probably also checks back. So between Ace-7 and Ace Jack, one of these two doesn't check back.
Okay, so like Ace Jack with a heart would be betting the turn.
Yeah. I mean,
Kinda,
Ace Jack with a heart might even bet bigger here. So
Okay, all right. It seems like the suits and the blockers have more effect in these tight ranges. Yeah, I had a hard time with this one, Thomas, and I honestly don't know.
Hey Thomas, maybe could you tell us a little bit about like the dynamic of 4-bet pots, like how maybe like how polar range construction is, what's more important, is are blockers more important? Just some things like that.
well, I mean, four pots are pretty simple. The stack to pot ratio is very low, so it's whoever has the other pairs and top pair. Most of the time is usually going to be the person who's aggressing. So here on the spade, on the queen of spades, like you got new ace queen, right? Despite the fact that they only called here, but a lot of ace queen has to call here because we discussed that on this board there's no pairs, right, for either player's ranges. So on all these low boards, despite the fact that what you actually think is that these low boards end up favouring the person who's full bet because the full bet has ace king and ace king can then bet for value. So there's certain boards like this and other very low boards where there's no pairs for either player, not very many pairs for either player, and so ace king is a value bet on those boards, and so on these particular boards you're betting your entire range here.
Okay.
So we'd expect villains to be donking here, and there's going to be a lot of donking in full bet pots because the stack to pot ratio is so low. When the stack to pot ratio is low, you really don't have to be worried about getting raised and then bet on the next street because there isn't enough stack depth left. You don't have to worry about getting raised on this street because the raise would be all in. So here villain can just bet, and if they get raised, that raise is probably going to be an all in, and so you really have to worry about one bet. One extra bet. So there's 3 streets and there's usually going to be 3 bets across them, even if 2 bets get put here on the turn. So here in the turn, villain should definitely have a donking range. This queen, as we discussed, hits their making them have a new top pair with the ace queen, and which they would have floated a fair amount of on the flop.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna guess here. I'm guessing that maybe Ace Jack is going to be betting the turn more often than something like Ace-7. So maybe Ace-7 is the hand that doesn't get to is not in range. I mean, Ace Jack block something like jacks. So maybe blocking jacks, blocking 18 means villains folding more often. Because I'm assuming villain's not folding jacks on the turn to a second bet.
The villain doesn't have pocket jacks here. Pocket jacks
Oh.
will 5 bet all in here.
Okay. I didn't take a look
So
at
this is
the
the
pre-flop
4
ranges.
bet ranges there.
Actually, I'm gonna pull it up on the side.
Well, I mean, that's a 4 bet strategy. I mean, the range is going to be whatever we 3 bet and then call the 4 bet. Alright, so against a bet on the turn, what kind of hands is villain going to fold?
Lower pocket pairs.
Which lower pocket pairs?
Oh, guess he doesn't really. Not any that would.
I guess he's gonna fold clubs and overcards, like queen high. I'm not queen high. Sorry. The connectors that don't relate. Well, I guess they all relate. Oh, his offsuit broadways.
Alright, does the villain have any 7s? So like, we're looking at A7, Ace Jack. Does the villain have any 7s?
Well, I guess having the diamonds is bad in this case.
No,
To
that's
bet
not the
because
question.
he will-
Does the villain have any 7s?
No, I don't mean pocket sevens, but he will fold a lot of suited stuff.
8-7 or
Like-
7-6. I mean, 8-7
Yeah,
probably
like,
would raise the flop. It's got to be a 7-6. 7-6 probably calls if you bet. Depends how big you bet. If you bet all in,
Okay.
Well, a third of them have a flush draw, so
might still call. So here A7 just bets the turn, right? Ace Jack is a bit too strong. I mean, you can check it down and chop against your opponents. Ace Jack, Ace 10. But A7 is basically just always losing, right? Unless with the 7, we don't block anything that folds. We do block a couple of calls in terms of 7-6 and 8-7 if they have that. Alright. And we also block some Ace Queen, which is nice, so we don't get jammed on. Alright, so S7 is not within range. Now the others.
I said. No, never mind.
So the ace king would fold, right? The ace king would fold.
Yeah, I think ace jack is a call. It blocks ace queen, it blocks queen jack. A lot of value.
Actually, isn't the 10s with a heart the call?
Yeah, why is that?
Okay, this is what I'm trying to figure out from this tutorial, because I'm kind of learning this. Like all the other 10s that don't include a heart will all fold, right? Because it's I don't know. Help me out, Thomas.
Yeah,
When
I
ace
feel like
jack is
I'm
not a
on-
good call.
I feel like I'm on the edge of it, but I just can't grasp it.
You got to figure out what they could be bluffing with. So what hands could they bluff with?
Right. So he's gonna be bluffing with some missed flushes,
What miss flushes?
like
What
miss
miss flush ones?
hearts.
Yeah, which
Hearts.
ones? Which ones?
Um, some ace queen.
Yes, queen's a pair.
Oh, sorry. So the ace 10,
Where's the guy's 10?
king 10.
Ace 10, king 10.
Yeah. You may have some queen 10 and jack 10 too, right? Which the 10s block with the heart.
I mean, it's debatable whether these kinds of hands are even called the flop. So you think about what kind of flush draws you can have that call the flop, but make it here. So the answer is like no, not really. They don't really have too many flush draws because all the flush draws are just paired up with the queen and the jack. So they're not really bluffing any flush draws.
So does the 10s block jack 10, basically?
Well, I mean, the 10 blocks some jack 10.
Like jack 10 of hearts?
Well, I mean, it blocks a bunch of hands that they could have that paired up with the queen and the jack. So it can block.
So are you saying most of his bluffs are going to include a
Queen
heart?
10, jack 10. No. There's not too many bluffs that you could have. So like, think about what bluffs he can have. Like he needs to turn a lot of hands into a bluff, because a lot of his floats that he called with on the flop have now made a pair with both the queen and the jack. On the other hand, like a lot of your range to check back the turn was ace king. So which hands could he be bluffing with? He could be bluffing with a bunch of ace high, with a king 10, ace 10, king 9, queen 9, all these hands here that are called.
Are his bluffs going to include an ace?
Yeah, he's going to have ace high to bluffs.
So ace jack blocks his bluffs?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So that's why it's call or fold?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So you got to realize that villain doesn't have that many bluffs here. All right. A lot of their floats, like think of these floats here, right? Anything that could have floated the flops now made a pair, right? Any heart with a queen has made a pair. Any heart with a jack has made a pair. Even backdoor spades with a jack's made a pair. So they have to turn a lot of ace x into a bluff. All right. So having the ace is not so nice. So the jamming range here. It's a bunch of ace high. A few of them's got some 10s in them, a few of them have got ace in them. But the jamming range has a lot of straights as well. Okay, they're 20% straight. So double blocking the straight is probably a good part of it after you face the jam. There with the 10s. Blocking the straight. Bet 10's the pot. They've got a lot of 10-9 that calls. 10-9 is fairly heavy in the preflop range as well. They've got all the combinations of 10-9 because all the combinations of 10-9 would have 3-bet and then called the 4-bet. So, I mean, 10-9 is one of those special hands that they've got a lot of from preflop. A lot of 10-9, a lot of 9-8, 7-6. Okay. Alright, question 3. Here we bet half pot, they call, they donk on the turn, quarter pot, and then they jam the river. What do you guys think about that? It's the same, not within range, call, fold, call, or fold. All right. So any thoughts? All right. So which of these hands are not within range?
I guess we're calling that turn bet with kings.
Yep.
Are we jamming a7 on the turn?
Why do you want to jam a7 on the turn?
Well, we got an ace. And
All right.
I don't want to jam all the other hands. Let's put it like that. Or the better to jam something like Queen 9 diamonds, but we have so many outs.
Are we?
What's the
I wouldn't have thought we have many or any turn jams given the SPR be so low on the river.
We don't
If
have
there's
any.
only one bet going into the pot, anyway, villain checks. If villain bets, we call. Then he checks the river. We can just go all in, and it's like half pot anyway. So we don't really need to jam the turn.
So we have one hand on the turn we are folding.
Well, when the SPR goes really low, you definitely do want to have.
I mean, I could see me jamming maybe Queen 9 diamonds because we block the set of nines, and we have some outs, and we can try to represent something stronger than we have. Or a7. Go back to that.
I think I kind of agree with that. I like the jam and the a7 on the turn that someone was speaking about before. I think that's reasonable.
So everyone's go with jamming a7.
Yeah, it's reasonable. Yep.
Oh, it was correct. Nice.
So we just jamming just to sort of deny equity to villains' bluffs, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So like on the river, they're going to be jamming into you basically all of the time. So the idea is with you got a7, how often are you going to be able to see the river and get to showdown? The answer is not too often. And usually that would be okay if you've got a very weak hand that's just purely bluff catching. But here it's like you end up blocking the value range and unlocking those bluffs. So when you do the combination of blocking value range and unlocking some bluffs, jamming becomes pretty nice as an alternative option to calling.
Okay.
So similar to the, I think the first question. So we're gonna fold those kings, and call the queens, and call or fold the Queen 9.
Why is that? What could he be bluffing with?
I'm thinking like he could be bluffing with hands like Queen Jack and all the diamond flush draws, maybe. Not sure if he's bluffing with. And then he jams them on the river, and then it's bad to have diamonds.
all those
Like he can have
bluffs
queen
like
10, queen 10, queen 9, jack 10.
He can't bluff queen 10 or queen 9.
So do you think queen 9 doesn't even necessarily beat a bluff?
Yeah. So that's
Could
the
be-
issue that you run
just be
into
like-
there. Like, I mean, queen 9, if he could bluff queen 9 himself, he could bluff queen 10 himself.
So I guess it just always folds.
Yeah, it doesn't always go to bluffs. Doesn't always be his bluffs. Like, if he was a check 10-9 or queen 9, like we would probably turn around queen 9 into a bluff. So, yeah.
And then the remaining hands, yeah, as we saw before, since Ace King isn't in villain's range, but Ace Queen is, we're always calling the queens, and I guess we're indifferent with the kings.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, you lose one big blind if you call the queen 9. Different with the kings, calling with the queens. So what they're bluffing with. They're bluffing with the queen 10, bluffing with the queen 9, with the 9s. Sorry, that's valuable with the 9s. So it's like if they're bluffing queen 10, queen 9, right, we can't really call with queen 9. And then the alternative is like if they check, right, we're betting around queen 9, it's a bluff.
Yeah.
Okay, despite the fact we've got 85% equity against their range, it's still a bluff because they're folding everything. Yeah.
Thomas, can you go back to that to the sim? What's the equity of the queen 9 for villain?
The equity. Yeah.
Really low, right?
Well, it's 14%. But EV's pretty low.
And the equity for our queen 9 after
the check,
yeah,
it's well, I mean, it's always almost a pot because we can just jam and they always fold.
right. Okay, all right.
Almost always
Thank
fold.
you.
I mean, in terms of percentages, they're only calling 6% of the time with their traps with ace queen, ace jack.
So with this low SPR, villain's checking range on the river is pretty much all just bluffs that gave up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very odd trap, but mostly just bluffs and give up. And by trap, I mean like top pair.
Yeah.
When the SPR gets really low, you have to jam a lot, because it's very difficult to make a very strong hand indifferent between betting and checking when the SPR is low in that position. Like here they can just jam. Like say if they got ace queen, they can just jam, and then you have to call 71% of the time to prevent them from for their bluffs from profiting.
Yeah.
But if they check, like in order to make that EV the same, you'd have to be betting into them at roughly the same frequency, right? So it's very difficult to do that for for them, right? So you need to be bluffing a lot, but you need to be betting a lot in position when the SPR is very low, particularly less than 1. All the 50% rule kind of stuff goes out the window. All right. So this is an interesting hand. So here we bet half pot on the flop, jack 10-6, and then villain just dump jams a turn. What do you guys think about this one? So these hands are not within range.
My first instinct would be that pocket sevens does not want to bet the flop, especially that large. So
Yeah.
I'd say that's why it's not in range.
I
I
think
might be
that's
wrong,
true.
obviously.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys are
I
looking
would
at 4-bet pots, having a weak pocket pair and a 4-bet pot is not really going to help you. You're never going to get a showdown with these kinds of hands and win.
Okay.
Yeah, you're really only these hands are in the 4-bet range, just to make sets on these lower cards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but still, isn't it? I still think 7 could be a bet because Lynn has to fold something like pocket 8s, pocket 9s.
Yeah, I mean, villains have to fold 8s and 9s.
And he doesn't have. Well, that's probably bad, right? That he doesn't have like 7, 8, 8, 7, or 7, 6.
No, I mean, you can fold 8-7, probably call 7-6. So which is not within range. So like you can use multiple sizes.
Yeah.
If you want to use a different size with any of these hands.
I guess maybe Ace King wants to go smaller, where we can sort of get value and get some calls from those no pair hands that we dominate and beat.
Mm,
I'm not sure
I'm
what
not
you're
sure
talking about
though.
there. I mean,
but in this case, sorry, didn't want to interrupt you, Thomas.
No, like Ace King, it doesn't make sense to bet, but this is not a value bet. I mean, if you're betting this here, it's a bluff, certainly. High equity semi bluff.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I think it makes sense, right? Because you can make a nut straight, and you have also the backdoor flush. I mean, maybe it's
Thomas,
fine in this case to bet big.
So someone asked a question?
I was just thinking that King Jack may just jam.
Yep.
Because of this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it just rips it on the flop. I mean, it's with this hand in particular, it benefits from getting folds from those draws like the Ace Queen, which have a lot of benefits from getting folds from those kinds of hands. Ace Queen, 8-7, bunch of Ace High kind of stuff. And we'll also get called by a lot of 10x, weaker Jack X. Right. Like for example, if you bet a small size and then they call and the turn is a king, that's not super great for you because it completes the opponent's Ace Queen. So having a king is not really super ideal. Same with like Ace Jack as well. Having the ace is not super ideal because like if you make it a 2-pair, then they're going to make King Queen straight. If you bet this size, so like even your kicker if it draws to a stronger hand, is going to end up making it still not the nuts. So it's a hand that currently is very strong, but if it improves, it ends up becoming worse. And if you see the turn, it ends up becoming worse. So with a lot of these hands that are very strong, right? But if you see the turn, it usually becomes worse. You can just jam the flop.
Okay, so on some other. So what's some examples on some like other flops?
So Jack 10 is going to be the most common one. We're going to have the flop jams.
Yeah. And where we got like pairs on the board, but there's draws out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll show
Where
you
both
if you want
pairs
to
are
look.
like
This is in a 44 subset database. If you go to check, and then we can filter it by the kinds of hands that we just revert. These Jack High boards, or Queen High boards, even 7-6-4. All right, check and have jams with the 10s and the jacks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fairly intuitive. Like you go all in, you get called by a lot of worse hands, and you fold out a good chunk of equity from the overcards that you don't really want to let in by betting a different size. The jack at 3 maybe, a little bit there.
Yeah.
King jack, queen jack. You rip it, you get called by a jack, you get called by an 8. Right, you get called by those pocket pairs because they have to call you with made hands. So in terms of the relative strength, like in terms of all their made hands, it's really good. But if you see the turn, it's you're seeing the turn against all their draws.
Yeah.
So it becomes not so nice. So currently, in terms of the ranking of made hands, it's very strong on the flop. But it might not be very strong on the turn of the river. So if you jam now, you force your opponent to fold a lot of their draws and continue with only made hands. And so you end up having a lot more equity against the made hands in their calling range, right? If you jam, you probably have, like here, in terms of the equity, you've got 76%, but if you jam, you probably also have 76% against the calling range, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you don't lose any equity by jamming.
Yeah, thanks. That makes sense.
All right, so we bet, they call, the 9 comes and they rip the turn.
Would this just kind of be based on just raw equity, based on the odds here? Like ace 2 can make the nuts, so we gotta call it.
Well, I mean, you're facing an all-in, so you calculate what your odds are and what your equity is. So what do you think your equity is here?
So it's about half pot.
Yeah, it's a half pot bet all in, and then so you're getting 25%. Do you have 25% with ace 2?
You need to find some hands you actually beat already. You don't just have odds to draw.
Yeah, exactly.
So sevens. Yeah, so sevens would be the call.
Yeah, the 7s is the call.
Yeah,
Because you beat a bunch of ace high. Ace 2 is the fold.
Yeah.
Right, because you lose to all the ace high.
Would villain also bluff with hearts on the turn?
Yeah, I mean, if they got hearts, sure.
Because, I mean, ace king also blocks king queen.
Well, I mean, I'll show you the jamming range. This is the jamming range. So he's going all in with everything. And ace king is a call fold.
Thomas.
Yep.
Thomas. That's okay. That's the entire decision. That's not just the jamming range. It's like the whole range is
Yeah. The jamming the entire range of the turn.
So it's a range jam.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so just go all in with the entire range. All right. That's your calls. Right, there's just enough behind to get all those flush draws out of the way. The 9 is really nice for them. Compared to us, like think about our hands. They bet half pot. Like this is the half pot betting range. Got some 9s. Some king queen. I mean, most of the king queen jams. So the idea is like here, when we call, when the 9 comes, their king queen has suddenly made the nuts. So they got more nuts. They got more sets with the set of 9s, right? 10 9s improved. Queen 9's improved. 9 8's improved. Right. So a lot of the hands have improved. Stack spot ratio is very low, and it doesn't really make too much sense for them to have a checking range, because if they have a checking range, we're just going to go all in ourselves a lot of the time. All right. So they just go all in themselves to try and deny our equity and try and prevent us from checking back at the same time. I mean, and this is not going to be fair. This is not going to be uncommon to have a a wide jamming range on a lot of turn cards. So like if we look here at the turn report, in terms of the width of the jamming range after they just call the flop, any 9 is basically always all in. A lot of 7s is a lot of all ins. A lot of 8s is a lot of all ins. A lot of 5s is also a fair amount of all ins. Alright, so 7s is jamming almost everything. Alright. So like they call the flop, and once they see the turn, right, if the turn is a brick, then yeah, some of the hands would just jam for value, and that's kind of normal. Right, and then their checking range has to be weaker. Right. The only reason why hands like Ace Jack, King Jack, 10 Jack 10, the only reason why these hands are called in the first place on the flop is to try to protect the range on unfavorable turn cards. Like say for example, an ace is fairly unfavorable, right? So check bet and then it can call. All right, but when the turn card is quite favorable, right? Maybe not 3, but definitely like a 7. So 7 is fairly favorable, right? It doesn't really improve any of the in-position players' bluffs. So then our position can just start betting now, because a lot of their traps have now seen a turn card that they don't have to protect checking range, right? So here there's no need to protect checking range at all, right? There's just a bunch of draws for hero. Villain doesn't like that. Villain goes all in all the time. There's another example here. All right, so we bet half pot on the flop. Sorry, quarter pot on the flop. They call and they jam the turn. And of course, this kind of idea makes more sense when the board is quite wet. Like so, this one is fairly wet, and the previous one was fairly wet as well. Fairly connected, and flush draws, that kind of stuff.
So pocket aces is not in range, I guess,
Why is that?
because
Agreed.
it's flop. Yeah, flop bet. I think it will
Yep.
bet really small or bigger.
Why would it be bigger?
Why not?
Really smaller check.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make temptations a bit bigger. I'm not sure if you bet bigger how much you're getting caught by worse. Well, I mean, you're always getting caught by worse, but like, you really want to widen the calling range as much as you can, especially with a diamond. You're not really too afraid of a diamond coming out on the turn of the river. So aces checks the flop. All right, now these.
Definitely calling ace 2 suited because you block top pair and you've got a flush draw. It's pretty easy. And then exactly the same thing as before with the kings versus queens, where we're folding the kings. Yeah.
I mean, that particular combo of queens calls a little bit. But kings always folds. So you can see the jamming range here. Right, so like if you look at the turns, right, the turns that aren't being donk jammed a lot, that don't have this donking range, are the same turns that like have really poor equity for a position player, right? So a lot of the hands that definitely could have just jammed or raised the flop, that have been put into the calling range, are doing so because you've got this turn bet option, right? So if you end up running sims where there's none of these turn bets, turn donks, then you end up, especially for when the stack ratio is very low, you end up with really weird stuff going on, especially on the flop. They might bet everything on the flop and then, yeah, whatever, right? Bet everything on the flop and then raise everything on the turn, and it just is not very accurate. So it's pretty important to have these donks on the turn in these 4-bet pots. Suck spot ratio gets very low. There's no real need to worry too much about protecting checking range, because if you check, like there's only less than a pot size bet left. So you can't really get punished for it too much, right? By having a very weak checking range. But of course, you still got some traps there. Right, traps there with the straight. All right, so they just check down the flop here. And what do we call with? About half pot, they just rip it. So which of these hands are not within range?
Okay. Would ace queen bet smaller on the flop? Like I imagine I imagine that most of the range is gonna bet smaller, like the 25% pot. I like maybe tens too. Like because it wants to keep the calling range wider. Ace queen having that the gut shot may want to bet smaller. Actually tens. I think the tens is what I'm gonna say would bet smaller on the flop.
All right, why is
What
it?
about queens?
So why is it tens? They're a bit smaller on the flop, yeah.
Well, because we want to keep our the calling range as wide as possible for villain.
Yeah, basically, right. Here the target tens ends up blocking a lot of their calls, right? So because they're going to be calling a lot of 10x. So if you bet a bit bigger like this, they just end up folding too much. So if you bet a bit smaller, they'll call more. And so with tens in particular, you really want to go for 3 street game. Bet small on the flop, call on the flop, call on the turn, and then jam the river. So you take that line with the tens. So the hands that kind of want to take this line here, where you bet half pot, will probably also want to bet all in on the turn a lot of the time. So which kinds of hands do you think of? You think bet half pot here?
King queen,
for example, probably one of them. King queen, king jack, right? What else do we have? King queen, king jack, king 9. Right, so the weaker kings probably, maybe even a bit of ace king. They definitely want to be betting a bit bigger and then jamming the turn, because they don't really want to see both cards, right? Because they're not quite that strong, right? Against a drawing range of villain. And so like if you got a lot of king queen, I mean queens works pretty well because it blocks their ace queen that will call. Right, also blocks their king queen and queen 10, that kind of stuff. Well, mainly king queen, right? And also gets called by a bunch of tens. Ace queen is just a draw, right? You got some pretty nice stuff there when you draw. All right, and then get jammed on. I mean, queen's also like, if you think about what hands that they could go all in. Queen's blocks a lot of that, so they're going to block a lot of king queen. All right, going to block a lot of ace queen.
I mean, the queen 8 must be the fold, right? Not going. Or is it?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's got queen 8. Sorry, that's the typo. It should be queen 9, but yeah. That's a fault. We don't have queen 8. We've got queen 9.
So the here, as far as call or fold, would you say definitely call the ace queen because it can still improve. It just has a tiny bit of more equity versus the range, I think, to always call and then queens call or fold because it has that ace.
I would have said the opposite, because if villain is sometimes jamming ace queen himself,
Well, I
then
mean, you
even
block
though,
just as much ace queen with both these hands.
I guess, but then if like, okay, I guess wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, so you call for the queens, you call the ace queen. So this is the jamming range. These two sizes are basically the same. Like you got this, like the good response is just go all in. This is the jamming range. So it's mostly just top pair and aces, right? Combination of top pair and aces. I mean, none of you guys talk about aces. And there's ace queen high, a little bit queen jack as well. I mean, both aces, ace queen and queens beats the queen jack, right, and loses to the top pair. But ace queen ends up blocking a little bit more value because it blocks the aces itself, right? But queens blocks a bit of king queen, right? That's about it. What else is there? Maybe queen 10, but they don't do that very often. So only blocks queen 10, and both ace queen and queens blocks ace queen roughly the same. All right. So I'm gonna show you the
Thomas, on these king high boards, does out of position still have a bunch of donk jams on the connected turns?
Yeah, so like if they call, for example, and like that's another thing that pro should say with queens. Like if you bet here queens half pot, like they're jamming all their kings, right? So on a lot of the turns you can bet 3 streets for value. Well, I mean 2 streets really. Like if you look at it, there's a bunch of jams on the 10, a bunch of jams on the queen, a bunch of jams on the ace, a bunch of jams on the 9. You know, a bunch of turn cards where you'd expect there to be a lot of jams, right?
Yeah.
They don't really have to be. You don't really have to be calling aces, but they do because they don't really have to be calling aces. They don't really have to be calling the top pair. They don't really have to be trapping the set. They don't have to do any of that. But they choose to because on those turn cards that are really bad for out of position, in position you're going to be betting a lot, and so you can trap it that way. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when the turn card is really good for out of position, they're going to turn these strong hands that they had trapped on the flop into donk bets, because otherwise they're going to check back too often on the turn. For example, like on an ace, that's pretty good. There's going to be a lot of donk bets here. That was like a 9. That's pretty good because it completes queen jack. Like a queen, obviously, because you got ace queen. All right. But like if it's like a 2. Like check there, queens goes for more value there. You just rip it for value. I'm getting called by a 10. But it also gets called by those over pairs, aces, the traps, the 2 pair traps with the set, right? So prevents so trapping some of these very strong hands prevents like a hand like queens or jacks being able to just bet the turn for value too easily, right? Because you don't have any of the top pair, all the top pair jams at the flop, right? So protect your calling range here on these river pots. Protect your calling range with something that's a little bit more polar, in some sense, right? You got these calls at the very top as traps, and these calls in the middle as in the very bottom as these bluff catchers there. Maybe we can contrast this to the betting quarter pot. When you're betting quarter pot, the same kind of thing going on, except a little bit less jamming of the top pair, but a lot of the top pairs just rips it. So, like if you bet quarter pot and you call and turns to 2, right? The queens is betting again for value. Could bet another quarter pot. If it doesn't get jammed on the second time, right? It jams the river for value. Okay, because you're thinking at each stage he can just jam a king and I have to call my queens all the time. So, right, queens or jacks queens or jacks. So I might as well go all in myself by going bet all in. Right. Okay. Any question about that? Yeah, just play top pair fairly aggressively in 4-bet pots. Okay, so so we 4-bet, we bet a quarter of the pot on the flop, another quarter on the turn, and then they dunk jam the river. So what are we thinking? So which of these hands are not within range?
I think ace-10 is not in range.
Where do you think ace-10 is not within range?
Doesn't look like a good bluff. I would give up with that hand.
You give up with this hand here. Or here.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure why. So like the 9 isn't particularly good for Willen's calling range. I mean, they got some of this stuff, but does this stuff really float the flop too often? Probably not. So I don't think any of this stuff can really float the flop against a quarter pot bet. It would float a lot ace high. Maybe some of the king high, so maybe he's got a bit of king 9. In terms of other stuff that can float, it's not a huge amount. Right, so as I discussed earlier, like on these low boards, ace king itself can be a value bet because they have to call with a bunch of ace high and floats, right?
So jacks
But wouldn't be betted bigger than on the turn. I mean,
wouldn't the jacks with the club just go for it on the turn? I mean, it needs protection. It's beating a lot of that stuff.
But I mean, if you got a jack, you're not super worried about it. Also, we already discussed that they're not really going to be calling all these suited hands on the flop, even with the back doors. Right, they're going to call ace high instead.
Can you give us a hint and tell us if it's the flop or the turn where the hand falls out of the range?
It's the turn.
Okay.
Does
So you can have multiple sizes
kings
during the turn.
kings without the club just rip the turn?
Why would it do that? Why would it do that rather than just bet 3 streets?
Because you deny the odds for a flush, just like ace-x
What flush?
clubs.
We just discussed that I didn't have any flush. Ace-x of clubs, yeah, I mean... Nah.
Is ace-10 going to bet the turn?
Yeah, ace-10 would at the turn.
Oh.
No, I'll show you the calling range. This is the calling range on the flop. Calling mostly ace high.
Now we're betting just about everything, right? For that.
Yeah, you bet your entire range. I mean, that's because ace king is a value bet now, right? 6-4-4. I mean.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, this
king.
SPO you can't just float random backdoor flush draws.
Yeah, no, you can't because the backdoor flush draw for one thing, and how often they hit? Backdoor flush draws only hit like 5% of the time.
Yeah. So something does something else on the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and betting bigger with ace 10 on the turn.
Yeah, but big with ace 10 on the turn, that's right. So here you can just jam ace 10 on the turn if you wanted to.
Fine. So
like here you can have a jamming range on the turn. I'll show you the jamming range on the turn. This is kind of what it looks like, but you got a lot of jams, and like the main jamming hand is ace king. Alright, ace king just rips it for value. Alright, and also to try and deny equity from the other ranks that might call. It definitely gets called by like ace high. Right, ace 10 tries to get folds from some stronger hands. It also gets called by a few weak hands, particularly those flush draws that will find it difficult to fold. So ace 10 blocks calls with like the 10s, 10-9, aces, ace queen. And gets a bunch of folds, but also get calls by a few worse hands. Eight, 7. Flush draw as well. Alright. Yeah, so check back. No, sorry, check back. We bet quarter pot. They call, and then the ace comes, right, and they jam. And like we'd expect the jam on the ace, because remember the range is like basically just ace high now. Ace high, some king high. Right, and then maybe some 9x. And then whatever, all of these so connectors that hit with his board. Right, so on the ace, of course they're going to jam. So what do we call, what do we fold?
I think the kings without the club is a call. The kings with the club is a call of fold, and the jacks is a fold.
But there's not much difference between like kings and jacks. They're both bluff catchers, but the jacks blocks ace jack suited, and kings doesn't block any ace x though. So I would have said the jacks calls.
Okay. Could see that, but then I would stay with my kings without club, call or fold. The kings without the club.
Yeah. I mean, there's you got to think a bit more about in terms of what combos to use. But we've already gone for an hour, so I want to finish this up. Think about what terms of combos that they're going to be bluffing with. Like what kind of combos here can call the turn, and then bluff the river. So king queen of clubs, king jack of clubs, king 10 of clubs. Right, they're also going to be floating ace jack of clubs, obviously. Right, so when they jam the river, they're going to have that ace jack for value. They're also going to have king jack as a bluff, right? They might decide to bluff king 10, also don't in this sim, bluff king queen, right? So that difference between the king queen of clubs makes for this difference in the kings, but the jacks is mainly because you end up blocking the ace jack of clubs. There's no real other jack hand which you block. You block the bluffs there. But you also but both the kings and the things beat all of the value.
What's it?
Well, I mean, quote unquote value. There's 10s there. Well, it'll be a bit of the 10s. It's mainly top pair and other stuff. In terms of the frequencies of the hands, there's not a lot in terms of the frequency of king jack compared to ace jack. That's because not all the king jack can really call the flop. Alright, so with jack you end up blocking ace jack, but not as much king jack. Yep, sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, if villain had pocket queens in his preflop range, so could bet it at one point, would this make a huge difference, like with pocket jacks on the river?
Probably not, because pocket queens probably would just raise the flop. Right, I mean, if you have queens, you probably just raise the flop. and so it doesn't make any difference on that run out. All right, check, and then the jam turn. So which hand's not within range? In other words, which hand's always bet the flop?
I think King 9 can bet the flop, but I also think they all could bet the flop.
Yeah, but which hand always bets the flop?
King 9, I think.
Yeah, it's King 9. I mean, yeah, this is King 9. Like, if you bet the flop and you get jammed on, you're calling.
It's just too strong to.
Yeah, you could probably just jam the flop, to be honest. You jam the flop, you get called by some worse hands, you follow some better hands. Seems like the bar ratio is low enough for that. Alright, so out of these last three. Probably not too difficult at this stage.
I think A7 just fold. Like you don't have always to draw to a flush, and you're not really. There's not much else that you beat, is there?
But what about pocket eights? I mean, A7 has a lot more alts than pocket eights, at least.
So which hand folds? So A7 folds. Like you need 40% equity, a little less than 40% equity to call. So, probably not, right? A7 probably doesn't have that.
Yeah, like you need to have a lot of hands in villain's range that are worse than A7 now, which is kind of hard to come up with.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about, does villain actually have any worse hands, right? Or are you always drawing here?
Yeah.
The answer is, well, yeah, you're always drawing here.
Yeah, but
even if they're blocking with like ace queen, like you're still behind that.
But isn't that also true for pocket eights most of the time? I mean, okay,
No,
you could have
pocket
some.
aces is ahead of ace queen.
Okay.
Like you gotta think about which hands they could be bluffing with, right? Ace queen actually beats a7, so like a7 is strictly always trying to outdraw. Always trying to outdraw villain.
Okay.
But eights not necessarily the case. Like eights will sometimes beat ace queen without having to draw anything. Right.
So would we call the ace 10 because it also blocks a bit of value and call or fold the eights?
Well,
It also blocks
think
the
about what
bluffs.
the value is. Yeah, you're blocking a little bluffs with ace 10. What bluffs can they have with an 8?
So call or fold ace 10 and call eights.
Yeah. I mean, both these hands make for decent calls. I mean, they're definitely strong enough. There's the ace there. Particular combo of aces I like to call. There's the ace 10 there. That particular combo of ace 10 sometimes folds, but they're both good. They're both good bluff catches. The main difference is having the ace of diamonds. Right, blocks a small amount of bluffs compared to the other ace combinations that you could have. The other ace 10 combinations that you could have. Yeah, and ace 7 against a jamming range doesn't have enough equity. It's only got 32-ish% equity with a flush draw, the gut shot, the ace, the overcard, but you need 40%. So I mean, it's pretty poor call there. All right. So like when you're facing these really big these overbet jams on the turn, right? You really got to you really want to have a main hand. Okay. So monotone flop, we bet the flop for a quarter of the pot, checks through, and then they jam the river. It's an interesting run out as well because we got 2 pair on the river. Alright, so which hand's not within range?
My first thought would be, I was going to say King 9, but I'm not really sure.
I mean, we are blocking a
It's
lot.
just a pure value.
We are blocking a lot, right? When we have King 9, and it would also suck if a heart comes on the turn. There are a lot of scary cards.
Well, yeah, okay. So all these hands bet the flop, but which hands don't? Which hands bet the? Which hand would always bet the turn? I'll speak correctly. Yeah. So all these hands bet the flop. So the question to which one's not within range is which of these 4 hands always bets the turn?
King Queen.
Why is that?
It's
Why-
a
why-
made
why King
hand.
Queen, not these other hands. I mean, these are all made hands.
Because the King Queen can still improve on a heart.
Yeah, and what else?
And it's just a better kicker too.
Well, I mean, King 9 is stronger than King Queen.
Right. So yeah. So King 9's betting, no? The turn?
Why would King 9 bet the turn?
No, I still think it's King Queen.
Yeah, I mean, so it is King Queen.
And I just think it has that extra room to improve.
Blocking the flush and not being so worried about when the heart comes and you get jammed on. Combination of blocking the flush means that you don't get jammed on as often when you bet, and if a heart comes on the river and then you get jammed on, donk jammed on, you can call quite nicely. All right. So the rest of these hands check through and then jam the river. So call, fold, call, fold.
I imagine King 9 would be a call.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
And then
Pocket Jack's just.
I'd assume like the king is a somewhat relevant blocker to like King Queen or something. King Queen with heart that Bill might have, I don't know. They might just check raise the flop or king. They're not going to bluff with the king, but they might bluff with like an offsuit jack.
Are you saying the jack should be call or fold?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
the jacks fold and the king jack call or fold.
Yes.
A lot of these questions have thrown me from being off from the reverse of my intuition, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's wrong for some reason.
I think the king jack call and fold, yeah. And
So I mean, this is the jamming range. I mean,
Okay, it's
they're
not
jamming,
a trick question.
They're betting everything. Jamming range in particular is just a bunch of boats. Total percentages: 40% boats, and a bunch of flushes as well. So boats and flushes, and then a little bit of top pair. Arguable about whether it's value or not. Yeah, there's a little bit of top pair that's left. Right, it's like a semi bluff jam, and when the stack bar ratio goes really low, you can have semi bluffs on the river. In the sense that it can get a little bit of stronger hands to fold, and a little bit of worse hands to call. So a little bit of jacks will call. King 8. King 8 chops to King 6. Alright. Does it? Yeah, it does. Okay. But main thing is that it's blocking calls. Right, so I guess in that sense it's also bluffing. Alright. Question 9, question 10. Yeah, here on the turn, King Queen always bets. Lots of always bets, like aces with a heart always bets. I mean, all the aces always bets, like ace king bets a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's betting the turn. But he's also donking the turn a lot as well, right? It's the same thing that we discussed earlier, right? A lot of his traps that he could have had on the flop are only calling the flop to check call on bad turn cards. But this 7 is a decent turn card, so you can have a leading range. Alright, so last one checks down and they bet half pot now. It's not within range, raise call fold.
Yeah, I think we're betting the jacks on the turn.
Yeah.
This is kind of cheating.
There's no real reason to check that back.
Yeah. Also, if we did have jacks in the river, if we did play it that way, we'd shove the river. So logically, it can't be. You're not always going to call jack. You're never going to call jacks in the river if you've got there like that. So it can't be any of the others. It's just a sort of logical flaw in the quiz.
Well, I mean, the first one you usually want to figure out is not within range.
Yeah.
And there's a raise here, so.
Oh, there is. Oh, sorry. Ignore me.
Do eights block bluffs on this flop and this on this board?
What kinds of bluffs?
Well, they're
So should be able to roll this off from here. It's an 8.
Yeah.
8, 7, 9, 8, 10, 8.
Yeah.
Ace 8.
Yeah.
So the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, so wouldn't they be the fold?
Yep.
Yeah. Ace jack the raise.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, excellent quiz, Thomas.
So here he's just raising ace jack for value. Alright. I mean, like, if they've got top pair, they can just jam themselves. There's no reason not to jam themselves. Okay, because you almost never have top pair yourself, right? Like, there's not a lot of hands that make sense to check back in terms of top pairs. That make sense to check back twice in a 4-bet pot. All right, so check it back. If they got top pair, they rip it, and you call with your middle pair all the time because even their middle pair can probably jam sometimes. The guy's king jack maybe. Anyway, so like middle pair. If they got middle pair, they're betting half pot. Right, as well as the weak pair, the 10s, the pair of 10s. So they bet half pot, and then ace jack, strongest middle pair, can just rip it for value, same as king jack as well, probably. Any other questions about all of that? So yeah, that's 4-bet pots for you. I mean, I'm probably going to do a few more quizzes on 4-bet pots as well, because we have this 44 subset now, and I might just go through and just either make the subset bigger or recategorize and do the same categories as the other ones. Because 44 is not a lot. I just did this 44 just to have a quick look. But the tree is biggish. I mean, it could be bigger, but you know, this doesn't allow you to have more than 5 bet sizes. So just pick those. Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, where can we find the subset? Is that in early access only?
Yeah, so currently this is only in early access.
Okay.
When I go and solve everything, I might just release this subset into the regular one. But with this, you can just play against it. Right, and I guarantee you're going to have a tough time. Because 4 pots are nothing like single raise pots. They're a little bit like 3-bet pots, where the stack pot ratio goes really low. But with the amount of donk betting on turns and rivers in 4-bet pots is pretty insane. So like if it goes check, what's the most common one? Probably this one, quarter pot maybe. Like if it goes check bet call, yeah, we don't get the turn report from that. But like if it goes check bet call, there's a lot of donk betting on a lot of different flops. Plenty of examples of that. 988, check bet call, and look at the turn report. Right, there's plenty of donk betting. Donk betting on actually the majority of turn cards. There's only 15-ish turn cards, 16-ish turn cards where there's not a lot of donk betting. There's less than 1%. And then the remaining 2/3 of the deck, there's a donking range. And even down here with these particular turn cards, you're donking all the time. So yeah, when stack pot to pot ratio gets really low, a lot of donks. It's about half the deck there. Right. So if you're interested, you can just download it from early access and then play against it. And then maybe if you want to practice your donking, say here is out of position, and then play against it a lot. Even though this quiz in particular was for imposition, I might do the next quiz on donking in 4-bet pots or something like that. Any other questions about 4-bet pots in general, or about any questions in this quiz? Actually, let's have a summary. Hopefully we put everything in right. Maybe that Queen 8 might have bugged it, I'm not sure. No more questions? All right, very good.
Is there just quickly? Is there any sort of important nuances if the position, if instead of button it was sort of an early position open, 3-bet and then 4-bet? Obviously the range is a bit different, but
yeah, I mean the range is a bit different. So let's say for example,
I'm just trying to think, is there any sort of important nuances about it, or?
Say for example, look at the low jack.
Yeah.
Against the blind 3-bet. These are the kinds of ranges, and so it's going to be a bit different because of the presence of the ace king. Furthermore, ace king. Sorry, should be versus 4-bet. What I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Big blind versus logic 4-bet. Furthermore, ace king in the calling range. But in terms of how different it is, I mean, it's not going to be too different. We're going to have a bit more queens and jacks in there instead.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with no, not really. I mean,
yeah.
Both spots don't really have too much kings or ace king, and then just the pocket pairs are a bit different. And then how to defend ace high. I mean, when you're out of position in a 4-bet pot, it's really about how to defend ace high, because you've got a lot of it. Right, calling them in 4-bet.
Yeah, that's why.
And that's why on these kinds of turn cards.
Yeah, the donking on the ace high flop is really interesting as well.
I've got to rerun the cutoff sim. That's pretty bad. But big on this button against the min one. Big on this hijack. But ace high. And this is button. It's a lot of ace high. That calls and no ace king. That's why the button can value bet ace king. So you'll find a fair chunk of boards of button can value bet ace king.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess just sort of similar to that, and that, but I guess the dynamics are quite a bit different if it's like a cutoff versus button 4-bet pot.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you're changing the position of the player that has the 4-bet.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot less checking everything out of position. Like here in this, there's fair bit of just checking everything. There's just going to be a lot less of that.
Yeah.
But after you check the flop, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Idea. So I might run I might run another 44 or 50 subset with cutter versus button, but I'm not too happy with the cutter versus button range at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh no, maybe it's okay. Yeah, it's gonna be like that. Cutoff versus button like that. Yeah, I might run this next. All right, good. So see you all in the next one. Probably another. Probably the next quiz might be another 4-bet pot quiz. So all of these, if you couldn't tell, were we 4-bet, but the opponent's taking the lead. And we're just having to call or whatever. Really facing a lot of jams there. All right.
Learn a lot from this one. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Yeah, no worries. See you guys. Bye bye.
Cheers,
Yeah,
mate.
thank you so much, Thomas. Yeah, brilliant.
Bye.